Hi everybody and welcome back to video 2 of our nutrition tutorials. Yesterday we touched on calories and calorie consumption and calorie distribution and the amounts we should be eating per day to either maintain our weight or achieve weight loss. Whereas over the next few days we're going to go into a bit more detail on the nutrients within the calories, such as carbohydrates, proteins, fats, waters, etc. and try and teach you just the basics of those so you have a better understanding of exactly what it is that you're putting into your body on a daily basis. So today we're going to learn a little bit more about carbohydrates. We're going to keep it nice and simple and we're just going to tell you the difference between good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates. Now, I'm sure most of you at home have heard the phrases good carbs and bad carbs, but from my experience, not a lot of people really know the difference, apart from the good carbs are good for you, bad carbs are not. So, we'll start by giving you an example of some bad carbohydrates, or what's better known as simple carbohydrates. So bad and simple are the same, and good and complex carbohydrates are the same. So we'll start with bad or simple carbohydrates. Now, just to give you a few examples of simple carbohydrates, we've got things such as chocolate, sweets, biscuits, confectionery, cakes, white rice, white bread, white pasta. All those things are bad carbohydrates, and so why are they bad? Well, the reason they're bad is because when they are eaten or put into the system, if you will, the body finds it very easy to break them down and release the sugars. Just to go back there, carbohydrates basically are just different forms of sugars. So when we put bad carbohydrates into the system, okay, we eat a piece of chocolate, for example, the body finds it easy to break it down very quickly, therefore the sugars are released into the bloodstream extremely quickly. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that we don't use the energy at such a rate, if you will. Even if we were exercising or doing some form of activity, when we're eating simple carbohydrates, we just don't burn the sugars that are going into the blood quick enough to be able to use everything that's gone into the system. Now, that means that obviously when we eat simple carbohydrates, we've got a lot of sugars floating around the body, if you will, bad sugars, and if we're not using them or not burning off that energy, they are much more likely to be converted to fat as a source of energy, as we discussed in yesterday's video. If the body can't find or use the energy that's put into the body, it will automatically try and convert it to a source of fat because that's its best source of energy. Okay, so that's why simple carbohydrates or bad carbohydrates are not very good for you. Now, if we look at good carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates on the other hand, as you've probably already guessed, the reason why good carbohydrates are good for you is because it takes the body a lot longer to break them down. So just to give you a few examples of good carbohydrates, we'd have things such as porridge, brown rice, whole grain breads, fruit, vegetables, salads. All of those things are what we would class as good carbohydrates. The reason being, it takes the body longer to break them down and therefore releases the energy slowly over the course of a longer duration. Now, touching back on what we talked about yesterday in terms of an even energy distribution or calorie distribution throughout the day, this is obviously really important. So you've probably all heard the phrase that porridge is a fantastic breakfast because it releases energy slowly. This is exactly why. We eat porridge, takes the body longer to break the porridge down, or the porridge oats if you will, and it releases the energy over a slower period at the rate at which we actually use it on a daily basis. So that means that we've got nice sustained energy levels throughout the day, once again, and avoiding any highs or any lows. Now, the simple sugars that we talked about, the chocolate, the white rice, all those kind of things, those will give you the highs, okay, yes, so you get, 10 or 15 minutes where you do have a bit more energy, but as I know you will have all experienced, straight after that comes a dip or a slump in energy. And what we're looking for is to take on board healthy carbohydrates as part of each meal that will actually release the energy or carbohydrates slowly and give us sustained energy throughout the day. Now, I know you always hear about low carb diets, no carb diets, high protein diets, but to be perfectly honest, the only one example I can give you to say why those are completely wrong and why I disagree with those is because your brain only functions off carbohydrates. So if you're not putting any of the correct carbohydrates into your body, first of all, your energy levels are certainly going to be low if we're not getting good carbohydrates in the body, and secondly, your brain's not going to function correctly. Now, your brain is responsible for everything that you do, so if your brain's not functioning correctly because you're not putting the right carbohydrates in there, then you're going to have problems. Okay, so that's exactly why we should be eating carbohydrates. Your brain needs carbohydrates, your body needs the right type of carbohydrates for energy to use throughout the day, so complex or good carbohydrates should be part of a healthy diet and should be or consist of each meal that we eat. For example, so we've got breakfast, lunch and dinner, we need to try and get healthy carbohydrates into there. So a basic lesson on good and bad carbohydrates, why you should eat them. Hopefully I kept it simple enough for you, and we'll see you again at tomorrow's tutorial where we will talk about a completely different nutrient. Thank you, and we will see you then.